Okay, well, anyways, an indispensable guide to the whole area of Gauteng, which is Johannesburg area, is this Chamberlain guide. It's an excellent book, and we use it extensively for planning the trip. As I said, another good guide, the Cone and Spotswood, the Essential Birding Western South Africa. And one of the better guides for South African mammals is Stuart Field Guide, which is a little bit more comprehensive than the Kingdon Guide to African mammals. Probably the best, and I would say the best identification guide I've ever seen for any place in the world is Chamberlain's Little Brown Jobs by Fantasy Peacock. And if you're going to bird in South Africa, I would recommend this to anybody. It's a fantastic book. Okay, we first started by going visiting a site just outside of Johannesburg. It was called Wolf Corral Huis, so Wolf Corral House, and Linda and I shared this cottage in this great acacia thornbelt birding. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you, Tom.
I've moved it forward.
The slides are not advancing. We're still on the first slide with the South African bird finder and the gentleman looking through his binoculars to the right. It's staying at that particular slide, Tom.
Oh, really? Because I've moved it ahead by several slides.
Yeah, it's not advancing. Okay, there's a new one. Kind of looks like our Bob White. I know it's not a Bob White, but it kind of looks like that.
Crested Franklin.
Franklin, yes. Crested Franklin. There it is.
Oh, okay. So I'll just have to go ahead. I'll just
whatever works for you. There's your cottage.
Okay, and so we're birding acacia belt, and this is a very common bird that you see throughout southern and eastern Africa. One of the franklins, crested franklin, that usually see in pairs. This little bird is it's a family that's endemic to Africa. It's the Batises and walleyes, a little insectivore. It's a bird of the thorn belt, and it's a male bird. Another bird characteristic of the bush belt in southern Africa is a brown snake eagle. There's several species. This is one of the commoner ones, and all of them, like their name implies, feed largely on snakes. This is a speckled pigeon. It's a very common bird throughout South Africa, usually associated with buildings and towns, cliffs. And we were down just outside Pretoria or Johannesburg, and now we're going to go up to Polokwane Game Reserve, which is indicated by the red dot there. We stayed at Linda Kroon House. There's all kinds of really good accommodation in South Africa. It's an amazing place to visit, an easy place to visit if you can left-hand drive, and yeah, there's tons and tons of places to stay. That big nest that you see in the top right corner, that's a hammercop nest. So Polokwane is pretty close to the Polokwane Game Reserve. We spent a day birding there. Mainly because it's a very easy birding close to the N1, the major highway, and also to look for a few specific birds. This is not one of them. This is a very common widespread species throughout southern Africa, the southern masked weaver, attacking its reflection in our mirror. Here's a fiscal flycatcher, not to be confused with a fiscal shrike that looks almost identical to it. It's a southern African flycatcher. And in Polokwane Game Reserve, it has a pretty good selection of ungulates, big game, doesn't have any large predators, but this is a young sable antelope. They turn blacker as they age, and they have those very long, backwards sweeping horns of the males. Also holds a few of the white rhino, which has disappeared quite a bit. South Africa is a stronghold for this animal, and quite a few of the reserves still have white rhinos. Another one of the antelope found in the Polokwane is the red hartebeest, and even though it looks kind of ungainly and kind of silly, this is one of the fastest antelopes in Africa. Polokwane is known as for birders as one of the best sites, or the site to go to for a lark called a short-clawed lark, which is endemic to southern Africa. I thought I had one in this bird, but this turned out to be the small-billed race of the Sabota lark, which is common throughout southern Africa. Very pretty bird is the Cardinal Blue. There's 4 species. This is the southern one. Here's a nice male. And from Polokwane, which you'll see in the map, just where my pointer is, we go up now to Megobuskloof area. This area is part of a huge tract of forest, the largest in southern Africa, and there's very comfortable accommodation in the Karisa Moya Lodge where Linda and I stayed. It was a very wet place, but some people say it's some of the best Afro-montane forest in all of southern Africa, and it is the largest tract of forest in South Africa. Is one of the birds you can see here. It's the African paradise flycatcher. And very useful in this sort of forest where hearing is a must, and you have to know all the bird songs as a guide. We had for us for the day David, which the lodge provided for us, and he was excellent locating all kinds of different birds. One of the sought after birds there would be the nice turaco. Turacos are a family that's endemic to Africa, and this is one of many of the all green species, the nice turaco, and endemic of South Africa. Another forest bird is the black-collared barbit. It comes in a couple of different races. This is a larger barbit, and some of these bigger barbits spend quite a bit of time on snags early in the morning. Not just birds in the forest, there's all kinds of life. Obviously, it's really high biodiversity, and this is one of the grasshoppers or crickets that we found there. From Polokwane, we went a little bit south to South Africa's only accessible type of falcon eyrie. And that's, and in fact, I think there's only about 2 or 3 pairs in all of South Africa. There's an extremely rare bird, a type of falcon, which was, which you can find at the JG Stiesdom tunnel in South Africa. And we were lucky enough, there was a pair there, in addition to being a peregrine falcon. It's not the best picture, but from the tunnel, we go south to Mount Sheba. Mount Sheba is a great place for escarpment forest and grassland species. It has a very comfortable lodge, as you can see from down there. And from there, we searched out the grasslands and forest. Here's one of the species found in the forest. This is the endemic Cape White-eye. And here's a view of the Sheba Highlands from up top. Most of the birding, the forest in Mount Sheba is done in the gorges and the escarpments of the area. And the grasslands of the Mount Sheba hold all kinds of neat species. Here's several cisticolas occur. This is one that's usually associated with a few with marshes, a Levaillant cisticola, which is a small warbler that's basically the majority of them are found in Africa. Here's another pretty bird in the rocks up at Mount Sheba is a Cape bunting. It's an endemic to southern Africa. And of course, a lot of people want to see the southern bald ibis. There's two bald ibises in the world. One of them is North African, which is extremely rare. And then we have the southern bald ibis, which is doing a lot better, but is still in decline. From the Mount Sheba, we visited Dullstrom. Dullstrom is another grassland area. It's most famous for its fly fishing, actually, but it's also a very convenient and good spot to see different grassland birds. One of them would be the Sentinel rock thrush. There's several species of rock thrush in southern Africa. This is one that's in the Highland Plateaus, Sentinel rock thrush. All of them have the characteristic bluish head and rusty bellies. There's another look at the Sentinel rock thrush. Terrestrial birds, always much like South American ground thrushes, always on the ground, search for insects. Another common bird of the grasslands is the African stonechat, a very small grassland bird. Here's a nice male. And it's very rich in francolins. They're all hard to identify. This is a red-winged francolin. Most francolins you can identify by the patterning of the head and the neck. If you can see that, we're able to get nice close views of this red-wing. One of the animals high up in the grasslands would be the gray raybuck. It's a South African endemic, and if you take a look closely, you'll see that it has a very woolly fur. It gets cold in the evenings. A lot of this high mountain plateaus is quite misty, so it keeps them warm. Here's a pair. From there, Dullstrom, we went south to the very famous grasslands of Walkerstrom. The Walkerstrom grasslands in the Central Plateau in South Africa are extensive. They're huge, and they're a mecca for birders because of all the specialized birds that they get, including some extremely rare larks. Some examples of the open country birds is a southern anteating chat. Here's a black-shouldered kite. A lot of people will know this. I think now it's called a black-winged kite. It looks like it's eating a fillet rat, which is a common animal and throughout the grasslands up here. This is one of the most critically endangered, most sought-after birds down there. It's called the Red Zlark, which occurs in a few patches of grassland down at Walkerstrom and nowhere else. And as you can see, it's a huge area. All the fields have micro characteristics that attract some larks and not others in some species. So it's very handy to have a guide. We used Norman. He's a local person that walked, I think, about 7-8 kilometers just to meet us in the morning. But he knew of all the special fields where you could find all the birds, and it was a real asset. In addition to the grasslands, Walkerstrom has a really nice set of wetlands very close to town with an observatory where you can see all kinds of wetland birds and mammals. Here's a Cape clawless otter that was swimming right by the boardwalk. And there's an African spoonbill, quite a bit different than the Eurasian spoonbill, which has a grayish legs and bill. Here's your African sacred ibis. Now, looking at it, you can see why vultures might be related to ibises, or closer to storks and ibises, the bald head, and a South African swallow, the white-throated swallow, pretty bird, common, widespread, found around water bodies. Grasslands, there's a few of the communities kept traditional ways. There's a few houses at one of the communities. And another shot of the extensiveness of these grasslands. They just run literally for hundreds of miles. One of many larks that you get down here. This is a red cap lark, named for its rufous cap. And we have a long-tailed widow bird. Widow birds, this is in basic plumage. In alternate plumage, widow birds have these long, spectacular black tails. And you can identify long tail by the red and yellow shoulders. At the bakery, there was African pied starlings. We went to grab something to eat, and there was pied starlings on the car, so I took this shot. Open grassland bird. And another shot of, it says gray-winged francolin, but that's a mistake. When I went through the books, it's definitely a red-winged francolin. Another shot of the grasslands. So from Wakashoom, we headed east towards the Makuzi Game Reserve. Makuzi Game Reserve protects a huge patch of literal forest. It's got wetlands. It has a list of about 450 species. It's super rich. One of the key animals there is this nice diala. Is a male animal. They have several good water holes. One that was very close to where we were staying was a Kamasinga water hole, and the animals would come there every morning. It's a great place to see not just mammals but birds. This was an Ayala buck, a female in the background coming to the water hole. And we have a little herd of wildebeest. Wildebeest going to drink. The park doesn't have many predators. It does have one or two packs of lions, or prides of lions, I should say. But in fact, one of them often hung around this water hole. It's great for birds as well. In the dry season, everything has to drink. So here we have a greater honey guide that's in the foreground. There's another bird that lays its eggs in other birds. It's a brood parasite, and a common bulbul behind it. African green pigeon. Green pigeons throughout the world, in Asia and here, feed primarily on fruit. After eating fruit, these guys go down to drink water. Africa only has about 2 or 3 species of green pigeon, unlike Asia. Here's a nice purple-crested turaco, endemic family. Closer look at its head. They eat a lot of fruit, figs, so you find them in the same trees as you do with barbits and in fig trees. And they, despite their fairly large size and what appears to be weak flight, they actually do really well, even in gardens and wooded areas throughout South Africa. And in flight, the turcos are known for their bright red primaries. Dart-capped bulbul, which is probably the most abundant bird across South Africa. It seems like this is a bird that you see everywhere. It's a nice pretty bird. And of course, not just songbirds that go to the water hole. Water holes are a great spot to see raptors. This is an African goshawk waiting for something to eat. Makuzi protects a pretty good population of white rhinos or square-lip rhinos, called square-lip because these rhinos are primarily grazers as opposed to the black rhino, which is a more pointed lip and browse leaves off shrubs. There's another shot of, I was going to say, I thought initially it was a female and calf. They look pretty big to me. Another highlight of the Makuzi Game Reserve is the fig floodplain forest. This is a huge fig tree that was in the floodplain. You can see the area is all brown, basically because most of the year, a lot of the year, it's flooded. But this is the dry season. One of the key birds to get in the fig forest are hornbills. Here's the trumpeter hornbill. And in fact, you can see the little figs to the left and just below the branch the hornbill's on. They have an elevated boardwalk at the forest, which is rare in South Africa. A lot of countries that I've traveled in don't have these boardwalks, but this brings you a bit closer to the canopy species, and it's elevated mainly because it's flooded for a lot of the year. It's required that you have a guide anytime you leave your vehicle. So this fella came along. I'm glad he did. The guides know where he could potentially get the birds. And in this riparian flooded forest, there's a couple of really good birds to get. One of them is the Powell's fishing owl. This is a very large owl, almost the size of great horn, which feeds primarily on fish. And quite often the guides know where these birds are roosting. Another owl that we got here is a widespread common owl like our great horned owl. This is the Rose eagle owl. You can see its characteristic pink eyelids. Makuzi was full of sunbirds because there was a lot of flowering happening. It has several species. This is a widespread common one, scarlet-chested sunbird, but there's other endemics like near-guard sunbird that a lot of people seek out in this park. There's another look at the scarlet-chested sunbird. Males tend to be, and sunbirds tend to be all greenish. Some of the mammals you get in this park, the gray duiker or common duiker. Duikers are small forest antelopes that hold territories with a one female. They don't have a bevy of females. They just mate for life. This is the commonest, most widespread duiker. It's the gray duiker. And there's a good sizable population of African buffalo. They look intimidating and they're big animals, and it's not advised that you go out and approach them because they are a little bit skittish, but not necessarily the most dangerous animal. Hippos, to take that award. Here's a warthog with rusty color, in part because it was probably dust bathing in the red dirt, and warthogs do come in with several different sort of color morphs. There's a beautiful swallow. They call this the lesser striped swallow. There's another species called the greater striped swallow. Lesser striped swallows tend to have heavy dark streaking below and a chestnut head that goes below the eye, and greater striped swallows are very similar but with light streaking below and the chestnut cap restricted to above the eye. These ones were on a bridge abutment, and they have a bunch of mud in their mouths because they're busy building their cup-shaped mud nests that are similar to a barn swallow. This is another sought-after species. It's called a twin spot. There's several twin spots in Africa. All of them have a characteristic white spotted bellies. This one is the pink-throated, occurs basically in East Africa, up in Mozambique. It's fairly common resident of the sand forest throughout Africa. Has several woodland kingfishers that are not necessarily associated with water. This is one of them, a common brown-hooded kingfisher. And it's a very good, Makuzi Game Reserve is an excellent place to see well, in good light, very, very pretty crested guinea fowl. One of the specialties that you can get down in South Africa and Makuzi is the eastern nictator, which is a bird that used to be fairly closely thrown in with the green bulls, but now the three nictators are in a different family. Here we have a Senegal or lesser black-winged plover. There's small populations of them are found in extremely dry areas around the park. They're pretty scarce birds, so it was really nice to see these birds. From right here around where arrow is Makuzi, we then went down to Buttermansi Game Reserve. Buttermansi Game Reserve protects coastal littoral forest and is basically a sand forest. It's excellent birding, very nice, comfortable places to stay where they have nice tree houses. Here's one of the animals you can get there is a red duiker. This is very much a solitary animal that lives in pairs and little distinct family groups, like pairs or maybe three. Here's another one. They're very common in the reserve. One of the birds that this place is known for are small numbers of the woolly-necked stork. Woolly-necked storks are found throughout Africa, and also if you've been to Asia, they're there as well. There's a look at a crowned hornbill, another one of the forest hornbills in Eastern Africa that feed mainly on fruits, but also lizards, bird eggs, nestlings, almost anything they can get their hands on. Hornbills nest in cavities in trees, with one of the adults sealing in the female, or the male sealing in the female in the cavity nest for the duration of nesting. One of the birds that is a specialty of the coastal littoral forest is the eastern bearded scrub robin. This is one of the birds out in the open. Usually they're found in thick undergrowth. And Africa's largest accipiter, doesn't look too big here, but a black sparrowhawk we were lucky enough to bounce into. They're quite a big accipiter, about as big as our goshawk, perhaps even bigger. A lot of people go down to this reserve, either Buttermansi, to see this bird. This is a Red's Apolis. Looks a lot like a bar-throated, but it's restricted to just the coastal forest. It's another South African endemic. It's a type of warbler with a longish tail. And here's another picture of a brown-hooded kingfisher, woodland kingfisher found there. Very widespread common bird you'll see everywhere, very distinctive. The southern masked weaver. This is a male, it's a molting male. And here's one at the nest site. From Matunzi, from Buttermansi, went down to the coast to Matunzi and Umlalazi, a game reserve. It has palm forest adjacent Indian Ocean. Here's the Indian Ocean. The dune habitat and the swamp forest is great for birding. One of the birds you can get there, you see a lot, is a giant kingfisher. It is an extremely big kingfisher, much bigger than a belted. It's really good for forest birding. Here's another one of the barbits. Barbits are related to woodpeckers. They have 2 toes forward, 2 back. They chisel their own cavities. This is again one of the larger barbits, a white-eared barbet. And we have a tinkerbird. Tinkerbirds are basically a small barbet, just only a few inches long, in the barbet family. Called tinkerbird probably because of their song, which is usually just a series of single notes. Pop, pop. This is the common one throughout Eastern Africa. And one of the larger barbets is a crested barbet, a very pretty bird. This one was just staying on just in the backyard of the place that we're staying at. I've already been through the speckled pigeon, abundant bird, a very common bird throughout Southern Africa, associated with towns and homes, and from there, which is on the coast down here, we went up to Creighton and Smithfield House for some birding with button birding. This is Smithfield House, the place that we stayed for a few days, and we were guided which is another endemic family to Africa. Oh, this is labeled wrong. It says village weaver, but this is actually a southern masked weaver. And one of the mornings, we went out looking for, it's called button birding because he has sites to look for a black rumped button quail, and in some local flays, or which are just little marshy areas. So before breakfast, we went out and we had really good looks at the little black rumped button quail, a really small gallinaceous type bird creeping about in the grass. Here's a bigger bird creeping around the grass. This is a secretary bird that was around Creighton, looking for snakes or lizards. The secretary bird, because the quill feathers on the nape were used, the birds were shot, and those quills were used for secretaries or for writing back in the day, ink pens. Another excellent bird to have. There was troops of southern ground hornbills walking about. I was surprised to see them, or many of them, because they're cavity nesters, and I just didn't see that many trees that were large enough to support big cavities. But here's a little family group walking about, and you'll notice the introduced pines in the background. Much of Africa is covered with either introduced eucalyptus or pines. From Creighton, we went up to the Sandy Pass. The Sandy Pass was a very famous place in Africa to look for the montane, the Drakensberg massive endemics. And it's a really beautiful road that winds up to the country of Lesotho. As you wind up, you've got ericaceous shrubs and flowers that attract sugar birds and things. Here's the Gurney sugar bird. Gurney sugar bird. There's only 2 sugar birds in the world. Both of them are in South Africa. This is the other one. There's Cape sugar bird and there's Gurney sugar bird. Really pretty, large. It's their own family, but closely related to sunbirds. There's another look at the Gurney's sugar bird. You can see a piece of its very long tail just between the plants there on the right. There's another thrush, the Buff Street Chat. Looks much like one of the several wheat ears. It's an endemic to South Africa. It's a real pretty bird, and they can easily be seen on a drive up to Sandy Pass. As are these things. This is much like our flicker. The ground woodpecker spends most of his time on the ground seeking termites and ants. It's like a few woodpeckers around the world. The Chilean and Andean flickers do the same thing. And here's one on the ground. They nest in burrows that they make in the soft soil. And it's a long drive. Button birding provided a really nice meal, and after a few hours birding, relax, have dinner, and have a lunch, I should say. Up towards the top, we get this specialty. Rock jumper is another endemic family to South Africa. There's two species. This is the Drakensberg rock jumper. Quite tame, large birds, 7 inches, jumping around. Here's another look. Very similar to the Cape rock jumper, but I think just as beautiful. I'll show you a Cape rock jumper in a sec. There's the Drakensberg rock jumper, and there's the Cape rock jumper. Both, from the name, the tour company rock jumper. Another sought-after bird is the Drakensberg siskin. It's another endemic to the Massif, just the Drakensberg Mountains. Very much like ours, I'm assuming a yellow bird. Another picture of the Drakensberg siskin. And this is a quite local, scarce bird, another sought-after bird that people want. It has quite a flattened crown. Actually looks in a way like a rock ram, but this is a rock pipit. Oh, that was part of lunch that they should pack. There's all kinds of goodies. I guess this one escaped. This is not a Gurney sugar bird. This is a Cape grass bird. It's in a family of its own with a whole bunch of other grass-like things, fairly common in grass or bushy areas throughout South Africa. You can usually detect them by their voice, because there's a view of the road to Sandy Pass, which climbs up to, the highest point in Southern Africa. Lunch break, sorry. And we're almost at the top of the mountain at Sandy Pass. I guess I was looking at maybe a rock jumper or something, taking pictures. Up at the top, which is about 2,800 meters, you can find the slotted ice rats. They're very much like our pikas and behave the same way, storing lots of grass in their long burrows. And actually, it was on my birthday this day. That's right, September 20th. There we are at the top of the mountain, 2,874 meters, the highest pub in Africa. And that would be it for the show. Thank you very much.
Well, that was amazing, Tom. Thank you very much. How long was your trip in total?
Well, we spent a month and a half in South Africa, but that was only, I think, 2 weeks.
So
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
2874. So that's what, about 9,000 feet? Is that the highest point in South Africa, or just the highest pub?
No, that's the highest pub.
Oh.
The highest point would be Mount Kilimanjaro.
Oh,
That's, oh boy,
that's
significantly higher than that.
Yeah.
It's giant.
That's Kilimanjaro's in what, Tanzania?
That's in Tanzania, yeah.
So what about, is there anything as high as Kilimanjaro in the country of South
No,
Africa?
those Drakensberg are the highest mountains in Southern Africa.
Wow.
They've been apart, split apart, and they've been separate for a long time. Hence the endemic species, the Drakensberg, siskin, the jumper and
Well, thank you very much for a great presentation, Tom. If there are any other questions, people can feel free to unmute yourselves or type something into the chat.
Yeah, that's a lot of work, rearranging all your photos to do it in the order that you want to do and doing the maps and everything. It's a lot of work. So I really appreciate the effort that went into that, Tom. Thank you very much.
my apologies for the glitch in getting set up.
Oh, hey. Happens to everyone from time to time. It was just really enjoyable to be able to share your trip that you and Linda took. It was yeah, South Africa is definitely one of the places that I want to get to eventually once the pandemic is over, which may not be for a year or so, but at least
South Africa is an amazing place. They've suffered a lot in recent years. First, it was a drought. Then they got hit hard with COVID. Not just with Delta, but now Omicron or whatever is coming out of there.
Yeah.
And then they've had quite a bit of civil unrest in recent times in Johannesburg with government. It's the most amazing place. It's easy to travel around. They've got all kinds of accommodation. The parks are so beautiful. It's a shame that the country is having so much difficulty. And they rely heavily on tourists. So it's another country that, because of COVID, its natural areas are at risk. Because a lot of these areas, if you don't go see them, if they're not supported by money, then governments might change their tenure a different use. Might clear the forest, that sort of thing.
Well, you mean they're not spending money in certain areas where you think they
Well,
could?
all I'm saying is that if, for example, in Uganda, Rwanda, if people didn't go see the gorillas and pay the money they did, that forest may not be there.
Oh, I see what you mean, yeah.
Because for a lot of the countries, it's just that money goes to government officials, many whom are, well, I'll just spit it out, are corrupt, but they enjoy the money.
Yeah. So did you have trouble finding?
Anyways, if there's any questions, anyone, I'm glad to answer. Yeah.
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. There are quite a few people saying what lovely photos you have, so that's really nice. Does anyone have any questions? Do feel free to unmute yourself to ask a question.
Tom, did you have difficulty in actually finding the guides that you needed in each of those different areas?
No, a lot of lodges provide their own guides, which is a really good thing. In fact, Linda and I just went to Uganda and Kenya, and in both places, it's pretty well, you can't even enter the forest areas without one of their guides. All their guides are, they know the forest, they know the birds really well. It gives them an opportunity to make some income that's above and beyond what most people are making, to be honest. Mm-hmm. It's not as steady, but when people do visit these places, they're receiving a compensation, and it's a great idea.
Oh, good.
For the Walkerstrom, it was easy to find guides. A lot of it we did ourselves, but a lot of places do have guides.
Is that because you did it yourself this time because you had been there before? I know you've been to South Africa before a few times.
We did it ourselves, but even doing it ourselves at the Walkerstrom grasslands, we use Norman, and then in the woodbush, the Afro-montane forest woodbush, we used another fellow the lodge provided us.
Oh, good.
And yeah, it's relatively, because I mean South Africa is rich, but it's doable. You know, on a trip, in a few weeks you could get about maybe 500, but it's not as difficult as a lot of countries, because a lot of it is open country, birding, marshes, that sort of thing. When you go to a place like let's say the Congo or Guinea forests, it's the forest birding, and it's extremely difficult because a lot of the birds are in the canopy. They're really hard to see. You're going mostly by voices. But in South Africa, or like even let's say in Argentina, it's very easy birding because it's open country birds, and they have really good guides. They have really good the guide books, I should say, and the information is top notch. Some of the best I've seen around the planet. Like both those guides, the LBJs of South Africa is, I think, the finest identification book I've ever seen. Period.
Oh, good.
It'll have a particular bird, like a buffy pipit, and it'll have it in 4 different lights. So backlit, strong lit, you know, in a light background. They'll show all the different displays of all the cisticolas, because they're extremely difficult family to identify. It's just an amazing book. And same with their where to find all their books are top notch again, just like ours.
Well, we certainly know who to go for some advice when the time comes for, I know for me to go there. So yeah, looking forward to it one day.
So Maureen,
Question, Tom.
What's that?
Yeah.
Question for Tom. You had a picture of a forest kingfisher. Is that right?
When I say forest, there's a whole bunch of kingfishers, like gray-headed, brown-hooded, striped. They're and you get this all through Asia as well. They're not associated with water, but just with woodlands, preying on insects, lizards, that sort of thing. So the one I was showing you was a gray-headed woodpecker.
Okay. So even though they're called kingfishers, they're really not eating exclusively fish if they're in the forest, but would they be just genetically related to kingfishers?
Oh yeah, there's the kingfishers are, but the ones in the forest and the ones in the water are identical. I mean, there's different genuses, but some of the genus may feed on the water, and some of the species in that particular genus might be a forest bird. When they're in the forest, they eat like large insects, small lizards. Yeah, almost anything they can kind of kill, mobilize.
Cool, thanks.
They do their killing a lot like a bee eater or something like that. So they'll go grab their prey, they'll fly up to a stick, and then they bash it and try to subdue it or kill it by striking the animal on a hard object like a branch.
Interesting.
Are there bee eaters in the country of South Africa, Tom?
Oh yes, there is.
I didn't recall seeing a picture of it.
Oh no, but there is. There's they have huge masses of a bird called the southern carmine bee eater. You can just use bee eaters. In fact, Africa is very rich in bee eaters. There's about maybe 20 species or so, and South Africa has several.
Yeah, it's an amazing genus, isn't it?